When it comes to research, remember we talked about the two different types that you can do, whether it's going to be the argumentative or exploratory. If you are choosing to do an argumentative essay, there's one other thing that we need to consider when it comes time to test our argument. So, in order to do that, we have to look at what we call common logical fallacies, because we want to make sure that we are having a good argument and that it is going to stand up to anyone else that's reading it. So common logical fallacies are an important way to evaluate the soundness of an argument and then to examine that logic. In particular, to look at what we look at as these logical fallacies to see if they lead the reader's reasoning astray. There are going to be 10 that we focus on. I picked these 10 because they happen to be the ones that I think are probably the ones used most, in which we can double check our argument to make sure that it is right, or that we don't have any fallacies within it. So the 10 that we're going to look at here, I'm going to read them and then I'm going to kind of give you an example. Okay? So for hasty generalization, that one would be something might be true, but you should be wary of it. So here's a great example of that. Just about any time you go online, you can go on any social media and you tend to find that fake news, right? Or you're not quite sure, so you're weary of it. You're not sure if it's actually true. Probably something that's very common that happening going on right now, as well as what always tends to happen around this time of year, or within an election year, I should say. So that's something that where we should maybe look at stuff and not be so quick to believe it. Ad hominem then is when arguments turn into shouting matches. They almost inevitably get personal. So I'm probably going to continue to refer to politics as a good example of this, because this would be a perfect example. We definitely saw this in our last election where it became just shouting matches between the candidates, and I'm sure we're going to see that again as well, where it's just not even giving us any evidence to back up. It just doesn't prove anything or stand up. Appeal to authority is supporting our claim with an authority figure, but they may not be the right authority figure, nor may they have or agree with what you are claiming to be true. So a good example of this would probably be, say you're going to write a paper about abortion, and you decide that you need a source to back you up and you want a doctor. Now you're saying that abortion is not something that should be done. You're against it. So you're arguing against it. And you find then a doctor that basically says that abortion's wrong. And here's the reasons why it's wrong. However, the doctor actually happens to be a brain surgeon and not, I guess, like an OBGYN doctor, which is what you would want in this case. You have to make sure that the authority, the person, that resource that you're using, the author of the resource, is a good, correct authority in order to back up what you're saying. Straw man, then this is basically misrepresent or ignore the actual position of an opponent. Usually used in political debates all the time, where we're just not even hearing the other side, right? Or the misrepresenting or completely ignoring what the other opponent has to say. False analogy, when an analogy simply doesn't hold. So here we have an example, are A and B really similar situations? So that's kind of like comparing an apple to an orange, right? Number 6, post hoc or false cause. So just because one thing follows another doesn't mean that one thing causes the other. So we have to make sure that if we're putting something in, that it does follow through with the actual then cause or effect. Appeal to authority. Because it's popular, it must be good or true. This is found in advertisements all the time. Maybe a good example was when we were looking at the specific ad with the deodorant and body wash, right? So it was trying to appeal to the authority. Just because it smells good, then it means that it is good, or just because it's popular, it means that it is. But you don't have anything to necessarily back it up. Slippery slope, then this is when reasoning loses its footing. So it starts out reasonably enough, the arguing is there, and then you start sliding toward conclusions that simply don't follow. So you have to remember to follow through with those conclusions and show that evidence, otherwise it turns into a slippery slope. Either or fallacy. In a black and white world, something is right or wrong, true or false, good or bad. We see this fallacy often in arguments that suggest that there are only two choices and each are opposites. So we have to, again, make sure that we're looking at the big picture overall and looking at all sides of it. We can't just look at one specific side. And then begging the question, circular reasoning, because it assumes the truth of the argument conclusion with bothering to prove it. So remember, in your conclusion, you have to have proven your actual argument. And if you didn't do that, then you don't have an argument to begin with. So these are the 10 common logical fallacies that we're going to try to use to test our argument in the end to make sure that it is a good, solid argument. You can find a copy of this document. I'll let you know where that is found then as well, so that you can refer back to it. Or you could always refer back to this link as well.